all, and welcome back to another thrilling episode of Off the Dome. I'm your humble interviewer, Jordan Brown. With me for the very first time is our stupendous stand-up. Say hi, stupendous stand-up.
Hello.
Chris, thank you so much. This is so exciting. We're a few months out of Chris Grace as Scarlett Johansson. It feels weird to reference the name of the show because I'm talking to you. It feels like I should say like you as Scarlett Johansson, and like
That's
I'm talking about you. But we'll figure it out as we go.
We'll figure it out. We'll get through it somehow. I mean, this is the biggest problem we're going to have to get through.
Yes,
currently.
Definitely. Yeah. We're a week and a day out of a real bummer of an election. It's a mood that really just
I don't know. Went great for me. My guy got in, so
there you go.
Well.
Great.
Suck on that, liberals.
Oh man. I had an interview scheduled last week on Wednesday of last week, and they're like, do you still want to do it? And I was like, sure. It's just going to be real weird vibes. Let's do it.
I mean, people still need to talk, and it's interesting. In the context of the special, it's like I know that a lot of people of color and women are particularly specifically mourning what happened, but there is also a feeling that I have that some of my friends have shared, which is it's a little bit oh, we're not that surprised, and a little bit there is 1% part of me that feels a little vindicated. That's this stuff is going on, this country is not as cool as you all thought it was, and also we all thought it was cool in 2016. We didn't learn our lessons from then.
No lessons were learned.
I mean, also it's going to help booking the live version of Scarlett. Please, I'm booking it for the next 4 years. We haven't solved it, so I guess
it's a shame. It's a shame that you solved racism, but then it came back. It's obviously a different story if that special ends early. But
I didn't time it correctly. I should have done it on November 6th, and then everything would have been great.
Yeah,
but I will say that a painful silver lining from the 2016 election is that there was a period there, which I think has faded a little bit, but might be renewed, where people really listened to marginalized people, because after Trump got in the first time, there was a lot of the Muslim ban, and there was a lot of aggressiveness towards marginalized people, right? And there was a little bit of let's actually listen to these people, because it's actually it is happening. Oh, my friends didn't all vote the way I thought they would, or whatever. And I think there will be a renewed period of that. That sort of pulled back the curtain on a lot of ugliness, and I think a lot of that ugliness is still around. And I would much rather have it exposed than to pretend that it's not underneath so much of our American culture.
Yeah, it does feel like a very natural transition into even talking about your special. Of the ugliness that is sort of there. Sorry, I'm not wearing my blue bracelet today, so that everyone knows that I am an ally. Which obviously is the most important thing, is that they know that I'm an okay white.
But are you, just because you wear the bracelet?
Yeah, just because you wear it's. The internet's a wild place these days.
Well, that's what it's funny, because I feel that there's a grief amongst white people, especially straight white men. There's a grief of oh my God, I can't believe we did this again. And specifically, I'll say liberal straight white men, where there's a feeling of you went to the party with your buddy got drunk and started saying racial slurs at the party, and it all went bad, and now you have to drive your buddy home. There's this feeling of shame or guilt or whatever, and maybe some grief about people thought that the American project had proceeded at a certain point, right? And so but I don't feel that guilt. I mean, I'm annoyed and disappointed, and but I'm also super energized. I'm a pugnacious person. Anyway, even creating this show was an act of being a little bit confrontational. So I am primed for this moment. as horrible, and I wish it was not necessary. But I think people just have a little bit more work to do, so we'll start doing it.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's everything you said. Yes, and I think that I do think is really interesting about your show is it's one of those things when I imagine when people first heard the name of it, they're like, "Oh, but is that still a But that's Scarlett Johansson's
Oh, I
story
got
was a
that
few
a
years
lot.
ago." Yeah,
Yeah,
and
I
then
got that a lot. There was a Reddit subreddit called I think it's called like Shitty Kickstarters or something. And it was like, boy, this is a dated issue. You know, and I direct anyone who thinks it's a dated issue to the Instagram posts of 80% of stand-up lineups and improv shows around the country. Well,
yeah,
in some of the most diverse cities in the country, like LA, Chicago, New York, London, in the world, let's say, where there's still a very, very high prominence of white people in casting.
yes. Yeah, yeah. I mean, you see those kinds of like horrific stand-up clips go viral every couple of years that are just like so wildly. I live in Austin, Texas, so like I have the
Mm-hmm.
added shame of Joe Rogan owns a comedy club here,
Yep, yep,
which
yep.
is just like a friend of mine who doesn't live here messaged me recently and was like, so is it just like all Joe Rogan fans? And I was like, no, please don't. Like, it's
Well,
not all.
also the mothership is being rewarded and confirmed as being like every alpha crypto Rogan Hinchcliffe Kill Tony instinct was rewarded by this election. So all my friends who just want to go to Kirby Lane and like go do cool Austin stuff or whatever. I just think of Kirby Lane because I haven't been there forever. But
No, it's a solid Austin reference.
yeah,
Immediately, I was like, God, I could go for Kirby Lane right now.
Kirby Lane. Uh, you know, it's annoying that I guess we always tell ourselves as kids that bullies are so insecure, but in the end, bullies really they always get their comeuppance. And they absolutely did not get their comeuppance this election. Everybody was hoping for Elon. I mean, whatever your feelings about Trump, people also really wanted Elon to sit down. They wanted Rogan to sit down. They wanted Tony Hinchcliffe to go away. I can't imagine what it's like living there. And I have a lot of friends in like the Texas stand-up community because I'm from Houston. And to them, they don't really see it as they see the mothership as like a great club to work at, which I think they pay pretty well, and so, like I think they treat the comics pretty well there. And so to them, it's like it's interesting because I think I have a lot of friends who might not necessarily subscribe to supporting Trump, right? But they live in Texas, and now that whole bubble just won in a huge way. It's going to be very difficult for them to not be swept up in this vibe that place is going to have over the next 18 months, let's say, to not also then sort of become a Trump supporter because, you're even my friends who are, my friends in Austin that are liberal, I would say in LA would be like moderate Democrats at best,
Yes.
because of the scale. Like they're very liberal for being in Texas. My friends who are liberal, left, progressive in Houston are relative to the people that they're around. And then you bring them to LA and people are like, what? You own a gun? Yeah.
Yeah, it's like taking the like Democrats in the United States and then looking at like European model and be like,
Yes.
oh, whoops, we're just center right.
Right.
Yeah,
But I mean,
also,
part of that is I was thinking about this last night because for whatever reason TikTok puts a bunch of I mean, I know exactly why, but like TikTok puts a bunch of burly white Southern guys on my For You page for reasons, but often they're Trump supporters. And I was thinking about how if you grew up in like small towns around Houston, like Alvin, Texas, or I don't know, Texas City, let's say, and you grew up in a bubble where this is all the propaganda you were getting your whole life, or like Paris, Texas, let's say. it would be kind of extraordinary for you to defy, especially if you were straight, white, cis guy, to defy this entire bubble that you grew up in and happen to read like a bell hooks book and then suddenly be like, I'm like, the scales have fallen from my eyes. This is all a sham, right? Like I grew up Chinese and gay in Houston. So I was never going to be offered the fitting in, the deal of like, you get to fit in, play for the team, and you get all the benefits of like going along with this privilege, right? That was never on the table for me. So I was always going to look for some, either leave Texas or find some alternate way to look at the world. But if that is on offer to you and you're being propagandized by it from age 5 to 18, it's not a surprise that at 18 you vote for Trump. And maybe we can hope that people being exposed to alternate opinions convinces some people to not think that way, but that's probably like 1 in 1,000. Certainly not a winning electoral strategy. But also, like we're all in our bubbles too. Like there's a lot of people in. I'm not saying these bubbles are equivalent, but I think human capacity to like rise above your local propaganda, I think is not something that we can depend on.
Yeah.
So to some degree, I feel like my entire career is political in the sense that I think that like there's a value in just being visible and being like, I think a lot of that propaganda works as long as you don't know somebody that of the people that you're demonizing. So if you're in Killeen, Texas, just to think of all the small towns I can think of, if you're in Lenoir, Texas, and if you grew up in Vidor, which was famous for literally a small town that had only white people in it, like legally, and then like one black person moved in, and it was a huge thing back in the day. Vidor, it's easier for you to demonize these people because they're not your neighbors, right? And in some way, content and TV and movies is a way of like having people be your neighbors in a way because they're in your house on your screen. So I've always felt like I haven't been a person that has come out and made like specifically political work until the Scarlett Show. But I've always felt like that even just being like seen is a form of politics, I think.
Yeah, I think so. Like it has that effect of I've seen people talk about this. That effect of like, seeing a gay Chinese man that like does brilliant stand up, which you do. Like it just changes people's people's opinions that shouldn't exist in the first place.
Yeah,
but changes their opinions of like humanity. I hope. I don't know. That's the best I got. Is that. We can change something. Like
I think it's one of those like death by 1,000 cuts type thing. Like I mean, my show definitely references this, which is like it's cool while you watch it, and then does it stick or not? Because I mean, I've experienced the same thing. There is also we probably all have a limited capacity for compassion and empathy, specifically like a limited capacity for action that results from that compassion or empathy. And so inevitably, and this is kind of scary, but inevitably you feel closer to topics that affect you directly. So there's a part of my show that's like trying to directly reach out to work against that, to try to say like, hey, I know you're not Asian and you're probably not an actor, and there are probably bigger fish to fry than like whether or not Asian actors get cast in certain things. But maybe just like hold this in your brain a little longer than you would. But I also recognize that it's natural for people to sort of like go back to their lives. And I'm further to the left, liberal, progressive about pretty much all women's issues, like in terms of everything about reproductive health and that kind of stuff. It doesn't affect me on a daily basis. So from one day to the next, I don't think that I carry as much fire for that issue, even though it's being directly challenged and probably will get directly challenged over the next 4 years. So I need to remind myself that I have a lot of friends and loved ones and sisters and nieces that will be affected by this. But it is not it's not a thing that like from morning to night that will just naturally occur to me. Whereas like every time I see a movie poster, I'm like, all right, it's a bunch of white people again, because I'm directly linked to it. So like I'm trying to be honest about the fact that like we have all these issues in our heads, and I think as liberals or as progressives, let's say, that you end up trying to have this like score sheet of, okay, I'm recycling, and I'm also like, I donated to Planned Parenthood, and I'm also like I'm doing all the correct things. Like we're all sort of being good students about it,
Mhm.
and I think the 2 elections that Trump has won perhaps reveal that like us all being good students about this stuff might not be enough, or it might not be the thing, because one challenge I think that we're all gonna face is like, if you're on the left, let's say, I think you're increasingly faced with um like, think about how many things in your head are like while you're speaking, and you're thinking, I need to say this the certain way, I need to espouse a certain position, I need to, and I think even non-public figure people think this way a lot, where they're making sure that they don't say the wrong word for this. And I think that's all good, but I think that we have an increasing feeling of like, okay, I need to be proper, right? And I think that there's evidence on the other side that they don't give a shit. like like they are extremely toxic and wrong, but also have this weird freedom to how they speak. Like the Hinchcliffe joke at the Trump rally had no consequences whatsoever. And there's a part of me that thinks like, are we just kidding ourselves that if we keep behaving properly, that that's going to convince people and like make the world a better place? Or, and I'm so glad that I don't have to make this kind of decision. Do the Democrats or people on the left, do they have to decide to go fully propaganda and, use the tools of persuasion that are at their disposal at the moment, which is like, like frankly, like a lot of like bullying and lying, and like to get to a better, is there a Machiavellian end, or do we just sort of be good students until the entire country is dismantled? Like I'm glad I don't have to make that decision.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that's
Is this interview supposed to make people feel better?
this is genuinely making me feel better. This
Okay.
is like in no way is it where I expected things to go. I was going to start with 50 Shades the musical, and instead
sure.
we're here, and like this, it's one of those things that like I feel like when you started getting into this, my first thought genuinely was I should put this on my Patreon for free, because it's such a valuable conversation and it feels so like you are so specifically thoughtful, and like everything you just said, like I think will resonate with people. And I was like, oh, I should probably like this should not be behind a paywall, because this is things people need to hear. Like,
what's interesting is that I feel very obviously like opinionated about this stuff, and then I started putting out some episodes on YouTube of just me sort of like ranting about this kind of stuff, and people have liked it, right? But then I also feel that I need to remind myself to stay a student about these things, because I know that there are perspectives that like there's a tendency to like speak authoritatively about these things when you like, maybe it's just content, like people like when you are authoritative about it, but I don't feel authoritative in terms of like, I feel like there's always information that might change the way I feel about things. I don't know. Anyway, things are going great. Also, I live in California, so I'm somewhat insulated from this. It's also interesting to me that like you live in Texas. In many ways, it's not going to be that different for you living in Texas, because it kind of already was a certain way. Ted Cruz is the senator again.
Yep. Yeah, I saw someone nearby had a yard sign that said, not like enough is something like enough is enough, vote Republican in every race. And I was like, Republicans have controlled every single statewide office like, in our state for 30 years. What do you mean enough is enough? Like they run everything.
I think honestly, when they say enough is enough, I think they mean they want us to shut up. I think they genuinely mean we don't want to hear about it anymore. And I regret to inform them that the next 4 years, if you don't want to hear about woke shit for the next, you're about to enter a hell.
Yeah.
Things are about to get exponentially more woke than they were. I mean, the discourse, like, you know, like people aren't like, as the ship sinks into the sea, people are going to yell about it the whole time. Like, this isn't the way to have fewer annoying conversations about race and gender and women's rights. Like, this is not the direction you want to go. If they want to make a national federal abortion ban, then they're not going to get the luxury of not talking about it.
Right.
Like, that's, yeah, you're not going to get both, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. It's look, I mean, look, I don't know. I have tried to make a few videos in the last like week of like, here are some things I'm slightly hopeful for, like the 2026 elections. The
Mhm.
map looks good for Democrats in the Senate, and also have tried to be like, hey, AOC's not leaving you breadcrumbs. I'm begging you to stop like theorizing that the election's going to be overturned. Like there's yeah, like there's this.
Also, to be honest, the Democrats are not cutthroat enough to pursue, even if they're like, Gore gave up basically, like back in the day. Like, if you're not old enough to remember that Gore should have kept fighting, and out of decorum essentially was like, okay, I guess, you know, the Democrats are sort of too nice about things in general. But I would say the points of hope that I have are, one, the majority of states didn't flip. So a lot of your lives will be of a similar tenor than they were. California is still going to be a bunch of rich homosexuals, and Texas is going to be a bunch of gun-toting rednecks, if the cliches are accurate, right? And I would say one point of hope is that I believe that the people that Trump puts in his administration will be more along the clownish. Like, I'd be more scared if Pence and Dick Cheney were involved still, because those are guys who can sort of strategically undermine democracy in ways that aren't seen by the public. Whereas if Herschel Walker gets put in charge of missile defense, it's going to be ridiculous. But if you think Herschel Walker is sitting down in a meeting to talk about budget cuts to the missile, like, Herschel Walker is not going to be an effective. Like, they're going to be ineffective in a lot of ways that are good for us. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Like, Herschel Walker's not going to sit down and make some secret plan. You know.
No, he would tell us if he had a plan. He would tell everyone.
Right. And then honestly, I think that like, all of our job is just to like survive. So that's the minimum, survive to 2026. Just so you can vote again. I think it's worthwhile to not. Actually, right now it's fine. Like, we're in a grieving period between now and the next 2 months. Feel however you want. I think once Trump comes in, it's not going. We can all try to not let ourselves become super cynical. And I say this as a gay Chinese man. I am bummed out when straight white people get more cynical than I am, because I think that if you've been marginalized your whole life, you have a lot more reason to give up and be into despair about results, you know? And I almost feel a little bit like that James Franco meme from the movie where he's in the noose.
Yeah.
And he's like,
first time.
And for me, it's like second time, you guys, like, you know, like, if you're marginalized in America, you have a series of like, just like from when you're born, you endure a lot of like crushing defeats where you feel like oh, not only did I lose, the system is almost like tilted against me. And I think you get a resilience against that, where you feel bad for a couple of days and then you buck yourself up because like there is no alternative. I do say that in the show, which I was only said in the Dropout production, which I'll probably say for live performances from here on, but that I didn't really say until then, which is, like the alternative is like just giving up. And I guess I almost feel like for like affluent, straight, cis white people, it's like, when you express a feeling of giving up, that is almost like annoying to me because I'm like,
it's very annoying.
It's like
it's annoying to me as a not affluent but cis-het white man.
Because I feel like when you give up, you're giving up lands you in this level of like privilege that you can give up, and all the bad stuff that's going to happen, a lot of it's going to miss you, right?
Yeah.
Whereas we can't give up. Like 3-4 years ago, I went to Dallas to canvass for this woman that was running for a Texas like House of Representatives congressman, died, and his widow was running. He was Republican, and there was a Democrat running against him, Jana Lynn Sanchez, in the same district. And it was only for like a year or something like that. It was to fill in the spot before it got redistricted. But I went to go canvass for it because it seemed like a close race. And I worked with, I mean, I was only there like a week, but I worked with a lot of like local Dallas, Fort Worth election people that work. I don't know what to call them, like people involved with local elections. And on the day of the election, there's like poll watchers where you go and sort of hold a sign and direct people to where to vote. You try to, encourage people to vote for your candidate. You have to stay a certain distance away from the actual polling site. But this was fascinating to me. The day that I went for this poll watching thing, not every, but like, I want to say 85% of the people there participating in this process were Black. And they were all probably over 40. And they were all extremely engaged in their local political process. And they were also on different sides. They were like and they all kind of knew each other. And so it was like a little cottage industry of local Black people that were engaged in democracy in a way that to me was like, oh yeah, like you have to, because we have to participate because it's like about survival for us. Yeah. So we don't get to just give up on the process. And ever since then, I just have had a completely different view of how people of color have to participate in democracy. And so I know it's annoying and this whole thing's a bummer. The next 4 years is going to be extremely annoying. But you know what? A lot of things have been annoying in our lives. Yeah. We have to do it.
Yeah. I'm like I said, I made a video about like 2026 or whatever, and a bunch of especially like white folks got in my comments to be like, if we have elections, and I was like, what do you want? Like I understand like that's it, but like that's not going to help anything if you're just like, it's over, we lost, the end.
Well, like, that is why I say, like, I think you can feel that feeling for a while, but like once the inauguration happens, like we're not going to have the luxury to feel that way. We're not going to have the luxury to really indulge in like, well, maybe he'll get rid of the 22nd Amendment and whatever, and he will run again. Like, I genuinely don't think that's going to happen. But no. I mean, if it does happen, does us giving up on January 20th, 2025, let's say it happened, does it help for 3 years for us to like give in? I don't think it does.
Yeah. I did see someone when same thing. I don't think there's any possible chance he repeals the 22nd Amendment, but someone did point out that if he did, Barack Obama could run again, and that would be pretty funny if Barack Obama and Donald Trump ran.
So could George Washington.
It's true.
Wait, who else could run again? He could run again.
I mean, Bill Clinton could get in the mix. George W. Bush could get in the mix. If Jimmy Carter could still run again, I guess, no matter what. He only had one term.
That's true. Yeah. So wait, we could have Barack and George W. as the vice president.
Yeah. Perfect.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Two war criminals.
Oh boy. Well, in the next 4 years, assuming that we still have a democracy, which is a place that I'm going to stand, at least in my
I
general
mean,
belief
what?
of like,
There's no other
yeah,
functional position to take.
right, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, God, people are like, well, Germany thoughts. I'm like, but like, you get like, we don't have another option, right? Like, I'm not saying like, ignore it and hope it works out, but like, the option isn't like we give up or we do nothing. Anyway, comedy though
No,
feels
okay.
like it will be
I
okay.
just want to say
Okay.
that, like, I don't think it will be as clear cut as Germany. I think that if anything, what's going to happen is a way more dull, procedural, boring destruction of the country in a way that's not even like maybe visible all the time. So, like, I think one of the most damaging things that happened from the first administration was the installation of all these Republican evangelical judges
Mhm.
that got put in with like lifetime appointments at all levels of appellate courts and stuff like that. And I don't think the public has no idea that happened. Like, that's
Yeah.
just a thing. Like, that was a lasting legacy that we're going to live in, expressed in the like Supreme Court justice appointments, but also happened like throughout the judiciary. So I don't know.
Yeah, no, Mitch
I don't.
McConnell very effective at not
Mitch
letting
McConnell,
Barack
you gotta
Obama
hand it to him.
put
He's
in
great at
judges.
his job.
Yeah, I really would like to flip his seat in 2026. I know he's retiring, but I would like him to be alive long enough to see his seat go blue.
Yeah.
That's my dream. I
Yeah.
actually told my wife my dream is that he is on the toilet, sees that his former seat has gone Democrat, and dies. That's
Wow.
my very
We're gonna
specific
keep that
dream
behind
for
the
Mitch.
Patreon wall. Yeah.
Probably won't put that clip on TikTok.
Yeah. I did tell my husband that, and I'll just keep this vague, there is going to be an incredible party at some point, and we just got to live long enough to have that party.
Yeah.
Like, there's going to be a week-long celebration of something. And I don't think any of us are going to be nice about it.
Yeah.
That's all I'll say.
Yeah. Let's see. Can I? And there's no way I can redirect, but we're gonna try anyway. Comedy feels like it will be important. It's a thing that I have said. Like it feels so important to have joy, even like little moments of joy in your life. Of like, it's such a valuable thing to remind you. Like, oh right, this is why I should care and keep moving and like get involved and whatever is like. I have moments that are like happy, and I would say like the Scarlett Johansson piece obviously has some pretty serious moments. I absolutely cried during it. Like it's not like just a like it's not just like chuckles the whole way down. But it does have. I feel like like it there is, and I think we've seen a lot of that, especially in the last couple of years. Those comedy pieces. I think I was looking through your AMA, and you listed a whole bunch of them. Nanette, a bunch of other ones that like have those like very poignant bits that are mixed in with really like big laughs as well.
Yeah.
I don't have a question here.
Okay.
Which is a pretty solid strategy that I have in my interviews, which is I just ramble and then realize I didn't ask a question.
Right.
But like comedy's good, right? That's a question. There's a question.
No, it's over.
Yeah.
I think actually that recognizing that there's some amount of Dropout fans that are maybe like younger Gen Zs who actually may not have experienced 2016.
Mm-hmm.
I think most of us actually went through it. And so actually, I think we're pretty good at compartmentalizing what's going on in the real world and then like also putting on make some noise and enjoying it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, so I think that capacity to feel the joy is like indomitable. Like I've done a couple shows at UCB this last week, and I mean it's too late for y'all to watch this, but tonight I'm doing an improv show with Reika at UCB, and those crowds are like, it doesn't feel like the show is like tinged by like, hey, we're really enjoying this, but remember life sucks.
Yeah.
Like the joy genuinely feels full. And so I think that will continue to be true. And also, again, just to harp a little bit on this perspective thing, like I actually don't feel that comedy is going to be like more necessary over the 4 years. I think it has been necessary. And I think that sometimes that complacency that I talk about in Scarlet has people feeling a little bit like, hey, you know what? Things are going great. Like these last 4 years, comedy's been fun, but we haven't needed it as much. And I'm like, yeah, I think we have. Like
Yeah.
whatever your thoughts about like thing comedy is necessary in terms of like, the gesture, pointing out truth to the king, or as an escapist thing to make people feel better, or as making people feel seen, or just doing silly jokes and puns and whatever. I think all the things that make those things necessary over the next 4 years have been true for the last 4 years as well.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. There's never a time when terrible things aren't happening that we could use some moment of levity for.
Yeah.
It's funny, when I was like doing a little bit of prep for this interview, my brain genuinely had a moment where I was like, wait, has Chris actually been on Make Some Noise?
I have.
I know you have. I know you have. But like there was a moment where I was like, did they just record that for the special? And I was like, and I had to go. I was like, oh no, yes, I've seen the episode. It's fantastic.
Yes. So I'm not on this season of Very Important People, but we did record a little chunk on there. And I don't think I wasn't on this season of Dirty Laundry. And then.
But you will be on this season of Gastronauts.
I am on Gastronauts. Wait,
Mike Trapp, and BDG. Seems like a very fun panel.
Oh, did that come out? Was there like a preview shot of it or something?
Yeah, you're in the trailer for it.
Oh yes, nice, great.
Yeah.
I'm very excited to that come out. Also, I don't think this is a spoiler, but if you live in Los Angeles, I've gone to the restaurant All Day Baby a bunch of times since then, and there's a connection between that and the episode.
Interesting. I like that a lot. You also like that's one of the things that I'm actually really curious about with Scarlett in terms of what was Fringe like, because obviously you weren't like cutting in bits from Very Important People and Make Some Noise. Like what was that moment at Fringe? I assume there still was something, because the show, at least the way it's presented, needed that moment of like you falling down the rabbit hole of who you even are.
So in the live performance, which people at the Elysian, when we shot the special, this is what they heard. There's more. It's more like audio cues that like all of the announcements are audio cues, and the rabbit hole is more like an extended sort of chaotic audio cue that mixes a bunch of the announcements in over each other, sort of the same way that the one that was in the special, which was really put together by like Jonah Ray, the director, and Paul Bonanno, the editor. I had this idea to go down that rabbit hole, but then when I saw the first edit of it, it was so far beyond anything that I thought it was. And I would say that the first cut that we got back of the way that little nightmare sequence worked was like 85% what it is in the final one. Like it wasn't, it was like intuitively Paul cut together this insanely beautiful sequence that was like not something I could have conceived. I know we had all this footage, but the way that he put it together was beautiful, and like we sort of tweaked it from there, but not too much.
Yeah. It was really like, oh man, I knew. I think that they teased it like sort of beforehand of like either you or someone was like, hey, if you're a Dropout fan, I think you're really gonna like not just like the special, but like there is this sort of love letter to you in this as well. And it did really. I feel like it was so effective at just everything. It's also very funny because I literally like you posted the Grant interview behind the scenes of like, I'm working on a new thing for Dropout Presents with Grant O'Brien. I'm producing or whatever. And I like screenshotted it and like shared it all over and be like, looks like we're getting a Grant O'Brien Dropout Presents. And then obviously we get to it and I'm like, oh, it's it's better, I think, maybe, of just like, it's such a weird everything. Yeah, I love the special so much. I don't know if I ever even said that at the beginning of this. The special's so
It's
fantastic.
assumed.
Yes. But yeah, I know. Obviously, like, Sam saw it at Fringe, and like got that sort of where this relationship built of bringing it to Dropout.
Yeah.
What was that process like of like bringing the live show to something that obviously, like you said, like has this like insane montage of clips, that's something you could not do at a live show of like, here's video from like very important people and make some
Yeah.
noise. I mean, what was that process like of like bringing that along?
Well, Sam saw the show in Scotland, and then I would say like maybe December of 2023, we did a Zoom where he said, "Hey, I'd love to like shoot this for this new thing called Dropout Presents." And at that conversation, I remember, I'm pretty sure in that first Zoom, I said, I'd like to do something with the last part of it, and maybe we could do something like this where we like I drop in on different shows or something like that. And he was pretty much um on board with it from the beginning. His only reservation was that he didn't want it to become too Dropout focused. um but my reasoning is that you can only see this show by being a Dropout subscriber. um you know, it right now can't really spread into, like, you can't just send a link to someone to watch it. They have to be watching it through the specific streaming service. And so I know what the audience of this is, you know. And every time I've done this show, I have customized the show for the specific audience. So like all the announcements are rewritten for every venue that I perform the show live in. So like in Austin, I had specific jokes about like, you know, Round Rock. And, you know, um, so because of that, I wanted that to be part of the construction of the filmed version. And I also had this other thing where I didn't want it to just be a, like, we turned on some cameras and it's a live performance, because the people in the Elysian that day are not the audience for the show. The people in the audience are the people sitting on their couch, going to their Roku and putting on the Dropout app and playing the special. You know, that's why there's specific moments where I'm just like looking down the camera, talking to you at home watching it, because like that is the actual audience for this. There's no context where it would ever be seen by a bunch of people sitting at the Elysian, you know.
Yeah.
So anyway, and Sam was on board with that. And basically what happened then is that we were planning for the shoot in February of this past year, and then sort of keeping an eye on every show that was loading in at Dropout Studios. Is there a chance for me to pop in there and shoot something? So I was already scheduled for Make Some Noise, so we did that was I think maybe the first one we did, and that was pretty easy. I actually think we might have done, I think we did that before we shot the special, and I think all the other ones are maybe after. But just as the year from January to, I mean, literally July, I just sort of jumped in on everything that was in the Dropout Studios for half an hour to shoot stuff. And something that was I would say phenomenological about this whole thing was that there were a lot of points where I gave up control over something in terms of the way it looked or it sounded or the way it was edited, production design, whatever. And 100% of those decisions that were given away in the Dropout universe, the person who worked on it was 5 times more competent than I could have expected them to be. So it was a very scary prospect where you're just like, this is a personal show that I wrote myself, that my husband directed, that we worked together, and like it's our baby, and I gave parts of it away, and they all came back better than expected. So that was really how the show got put together from January to August, was, you know, a bunch of the parts of the special that people love and are impressed by and that people talk about are things that I saw them too, and I was like, I can't believe how good that is. You know? So that was wild. Like the level of everybody at Dropout trying to do a good job, I think is higher than any other creative company right now. That's a
Yeah.
pretty universal thing to say, but I think it's true. I mean, it benefits from the fact that Dropout is still relatively small, but like truly everybody there is just trying to hit a home run at whatever their little slice of the project is.
Yeah. Yeah, I have talked to, you are the 55th person that I have talked to that works at Dropout in some capacity.
Nice.
It is a thing that I've heard a bunch as well of like people talking about like, not only obviously like people care, but like they're talented and whatever. But like it always rings with me that how much people love what they're doing and are trying to make it the best possible product for an audience that also I think really cares about these kind of things.
I think that at Dropout, there's probably a greater overlap between the people working at Dropout and people that watch and care about Dropout content.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people that work at Dropout are also keeping up and watching the shows as they come out and are like, it doesn't feel like a job. It definitely is a job, but it doesn't feel like a job that they hold a distance from, you know?
Right. Yeah, and like, even like cast members that I've talked to, I'll say something like, "Oh yeah," and they'll mention a show, they'll mention an episode of Thousand Airs that they weren't on.
Right.
And it's like, "Oh yeah, you just watched you're just watching the other content on the platform because you love it."
We watch it. I watch all the other content because I love it, and I also think, how come I wasn't cast in this one?
Super fair.
Why was I not in 1,000 Airs, Sam?
Yeah, unacceptable, Sam. And speaking of things that are unacceptable, when is Sardines coming to Dropout Presents? I don't know anything about it other than that's your new show, and I need to see it.
Well, I'm basically going to be like touring it and stuff in 2025, and I mean, maybe like I don't want Sam or David Kearns to feel an obligation to put like I told them actually, like, because Sardines was at Fringe this last year and it did, I would say, as well or better than Scarlett did. And I told them, like, I'm not sure even that the tone of this show is something that you want to put on Dropout because it's very sad.
It's about death, right?
It's about death. At least have much sadder than, like, if you cried during Scarlett, you will cry during this. So, yeah, okay, wait. This is an interesting dynamic because I don't want them to feel obligated just because we're pals that they need to put my show in Dropout Presents. I also know that there's like 20 to 30 other people that could have a Dropout Presents that are doing interesting work that should be amplified. At the same time, I'll just tell myself that I don't need to downplay my own show out of deference to like other people, right? I'll say this across the board. If you're a marginalized person, probably deference is never going to be helpful to you. The system is already deferring you. So you don't need to add any additional deference to it. So the thing I would tell myself is like, Sam and David and the rest of Dropout believes in me and believes in the work I've done. They've also seen Sardines, so they love it, right? So, I will. Oh, the other thing I was going to say was that also it would be nice if I was just an artist that just had a continuing relationship with Dropout, and so that if Dropout was sort of like my first like right of refusal to be like, hey, I've got a show. Dropout, do you want it? If not, we'll try to like shop it somewhere else. So these are all the things. These are also like all the unclear dynamics that are happening in my head around. It's
this. Dave Chappelle at Netflix, but with jokes and is good. How about that?
Yes. And yeah, like I would love to have it come out in a Dropout Presents. But I will say right now there are no plans for that. So I mean, if Netflix wants to give me $8 million for it, I'll go and see if Sam wants to meet that
Yeah,
bid.
yeah. I'm really excited. I've really, like I said, I love Scarlett. I've gotten to see you sort of like as you've, bounced around some of the other Dropout shows actually on Make Some Noise, and then like really getting to see, spending obviously like a full hour with you in the Scarlett show, and get to see like a really different side of your comedy. It's, I think, really, really interesting, and I don't want to like, you know, harp on like, but like obviously like there are different sets of skills of like improv and written stand up are like pretty different, and you seem to be very good at both of them, which is I think a very impressive set. I think I think there are people at Dropout that are like that, but I think there are a lot of people that fall into one camp and not both.
Yeah. I think that one, keep in mind that I'm old. So I am older than the typical Dropout cast member, which means that I've had longer to sort of marinate in all of these skills. Because I've been doing improv. I've been doing improv and stand up both 20 plus years. But I will say that if you had checked in with me 10 years ago, 5 years ago, the gap between my improv and my stand up was much bigger. So, and that becomes very hard for someone who's on a house team at UCB, where you can go pre-pandemic, you could go do a show every Friday at 7 p.m. at UCB Sunset to a well-sold, if not sold out crowd that all loved you, and have an incredible show with friends. And then on Sunday, you go to an open mic with 6 people that hate you, and you get 2 laughs in 6 minutes, let's say.
Yeah.
It takes a certain amount of stamina to keep doing that when you've got the other thing. And I think that's a tempting thing for a lot of improvisers, is that like, oh, I'm in this bubble where like I'm with friends and we're killing, and I don't have to book the show. I barely have to promote the show. And I just am getting so much about it. And improv is so fun. At the same time, I'll remind everybody that for decades, none of us were getting paid to do improv. And your 5,000th most successful stand-up comedian in the US is making like a middle-class living, has made so much more money than any improviser in the world. And so like, there, at least for a little while, there was an exploitative nature of this like community buddy improv world that was just like, oh yeah, oh by the way, we're doing incredible comedy shows that are being sold at $5, $10, $15, $20 a ticket, and none of us are getting paid, and we're all just cool with it because Del Close said we should be or something. I don't know. Anyway, it's just to say that there was a long period where I had to sort of survive that disparate feeling between the improv world and the stand-up world.
Yeah. I know you have Art Baguette's show tonight. I actually talked to Reka. She was on a live this morning. She wanted me to ask you if it's a great show or the greatest show. So
Art Baguette's
your show tonight with Reka, and
I'll say it's the greatest. This will probably come out after we've done it,
after you've done it.
But I will say that the skits that Reka and I pre-planned for tonight's improv show are very good, and I think the execution will be great. We got Grant O'Brien as well. We're just going to give FOMO to everybody watching this that missed the show.
You're not going to get to see this comic book be talked about.
Abria's new comic book, which I think is going to be the inspiration for the show.
Yeah, Chris, this was absolutely amazing. Thank you so much. This was genuinely exactly what I needed this week. I cannot thank you enough.
I'll give you a thing that'll make everybody feel better.
Great.
Which is that in my special, all of the Dropout things that we shot, like we popped in. Oh, I'll give you 2 little Easter eggs. One is Dirty Laundry. I was never there on set with them, so my part is separate from them. We shot them on 2 different days because of scheduling. So they're all looking at nothing basically when they're like, "Who is that?" Also, I encourage people to zoom into the list of drinks behind me because those are all in jokes.
Oh,
You know,
very
the
fun.
drinks in Dirty
Yeah,
Laundry.
yeah.
Like we wrote specific jokes on the board behind.
I don't think I've seen anyone post that.
Yeah, and that's my husband's handwriting. But this will. I thought it was really cool. Everybody that shot a little cameo in that section, because at the end it's like, if you look in the credits, it's like special appearances by a bunch of people. All of those cast members got a full day session rate for their appearance, which maybe some people are like, yeah, of course. But to me, I'm coming from the world of comedy and sketch comedy and shooting YouTube things where it's like, hey, can you just come do this thing for us? And like, it's not paid. It's just like in the Dropout world, the context of like, hey, you're shot Dirty Laundry. Could you just hang out another 20 minutes, which is literally how long these things took, right? And shoot another one. There is a thing from comedy, scrappy comedy, where we'd be just like, yeah, I wouldn't even think to ask for money if I was being asked that, right? Because I was already on set. It's just a little favor. I feel like you do collaborative things or even marketing things where people are constantly asking you like, hey, make a TikTok for whatever, right? So in my maybe cutthroat, capitalistic, or just inconsiderate mind, I was literally like, yeah, they're just doing it because we're just hanging out, like, you know. And then I found out from Reka, Reka and I were hanging out in Edinburgh this year, and she's like, no, we got paid for that. But I think that's indicative of Sam and David and the Dropout philosophy of they're not going to ask your time without compensating you. And I feel so happy, actually, that I got like 15 people an extra day's pay by including them in these little cameos. Like, that's, you know.
Yeah, including Brennan in, I think, the hottest he's ever looked. It's upsetting.
Yeah. So I was really happy to hear that, and also somewhat chagrined that I had not thought that they should be paid.
Yeah. Chris, it's amazing. If the folks out there wanted to find you on the internet, where can they find you?
You can go to TikTok or Instagram at Chris Grace Comedy. Oh, also, I will say that if you go to my YouTube channel, Chris Grace on YouTube, I am putting out more. If you like some of the rants and rambles I did today, that's essentially what my YouTube sort of show is. Like, I'm not trying to be like a left Joe Rogan, but I realized that space is pretty empty right now. And honestly, this morning I realized the only person that feels like that is Hank Green, who has a sort of like, oh, I watch him and I feel better type of situation.
Yeah, I think we desperately need more voices like yours yelling loudly at us. Sardines coming all across the country in 2025. I assume that you'll be announcing those tour dates soon-ish.
Yes, but if you're one of the special ones and you're seeing this early enough, I will be at the Elysian on November 24th at 9 p.m. doing Sardines. Great. So please come see that.
Absolutely. Amazing. Chris, thank you so much. This was absolutely delightful. I couldn't have asked for a better interview on a weirder week. And I don't know how to end an interview, so I'm just going to hit stop recording.
Thank you.